Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. I have no idea if you guys are going to notice, but there's going to be a lot less B-roll in this one because I have less time to edit, so enjoy the Helldivers gameplay. The first question comes from Colin Sutton, 6924. 1. What is your lipstick shade? It looks like a Merlot color. 2. Would you ever consider sharing one of your own personal D&D horror stories? I'm holding my lipstick shade right now, and it's 663 Violet from Revlon. So if that helps you find it, there you go. It's super cheap. I got it at like a gas station the first time. You can buy it at CVS. It's super easy to find and very much affordable, though I will say it does come off super easily. That's cheap lipstick for you. But yeah, I do love this shade. It's the best one on me. I've tried a couple shades like a dark navy black or maybe a navy blue / black, and I also like a good dark red, and the dark red I do vibe with, but this just deep purple, it really just fulfills my soul. Now, as for my own personal D&D horror stories, I do have lots of those, but I actually have shared a good amount of them on the channel in the past. They range from my first ever D&D campaign, where I had a problem player wizard in Curse of Strahd, who had a big old problem with losing and was a bit of an edgelord. I did that story for my 10,000 subscribers special. I also have a horror story about that same player coming back years later, and the messages shared between us. I talked about that on my podcast. I think the only one I haven't gone into detail on would be a horror story that happened during the filming of the 10th Tomb D&D actual play. Not to say the party were a horror story, they were not. They were all wonderful angels, and I love every single one of them. They were incredible people. The horror was me. I had a panic attack during the filming of the show, not the fault of the game or the players or anything. It just happens sometimes just randomly. Anxiety will punch you in the face, and yes, it's very debilitating, but it's something that I have to learn to live with. I tried to push my way through it, and that was very irresponsible of me. Midway through the episode, I called for a break, and during that break, I started hyperventilating visibly, and that obviously was very embarrassing for me because I don't like it when people watch me have an anxiety attack. I don't think anyone likes that, to be frank. So that made things worse because I felt embarrassed, and embarrassment definitely doesn't help with anxiety. I stepped off camera for a little bit. There were also a lot of technical difficulties throughout, which only stressed me out more. I'm sure that did not help with whatever was going on in my brain. And so overall, that session needed to be cut extremely short. You'll notice that episode is the shortest out of the entire 10th Tomb lineup, and the primary reason is because of that panic attack. Now, luckily, that wasn't really a problem in the future. Any issues with my DMing, we sorted out through discussion and over-the-table talk. And overall, that campaign is one of the best I've ever run. But yes, sometimes, even in great campaigns, stuff happens, like panic attacks. Next question from Twilight Rose 7931. That wig is flawless. Did you style it yourself? So, this question in particular is referring to my Shadowheart wig from my recent Shadowheart cosplay, and unfortunately, no, I did not style it myself. I actually was recently replaying Baldur's Gate 3, and Lae'zel actually compliments Shadowheart's hair and how she does it, because it looks really complicated and difficult, and she's not freaking joking. It is complicated and difficult. I bought a super long ponytail wig with the braid, and my friends helped me style it, though I did do all like the ornamentation and stuff. Frankly, crafting little chains and 3D printing and painting little ornaments, I think that's the simple part. Styling the hair, I wouldn't even know where to start. My friends with the female persuasion, people who have long hair, those ladies, they came in clutch and helped my clueless ass out. So you know what? Shout out to them. They're great. As for your other question, what's your favorite Arrow Ace or just Arrow or Ace character you've seen, either acknowledged by the creator or just speculated to be? I think my favorite overall would have to be Varys from Game of Thrones. Not only is he a phenomenal character in the books, though in the show he has a pretty lame ending. I'll ignore that. The point is that Varys from Game of Thrones is, embarrassingly, the reason why I found out that asexuality exists and how I found out that that is my orientation. Like, my entire life, I didn't really know what was wrong with me, so to speak. I wasn't attracted to anybody, and by the time of high school, I was figuring there's something that should be happening here. And when I watched Game of Thrones and saw Varys say that he was never attracted to anyone, I was like, what sorcery is this? he's just like me. And so I looked up, what was Varus talking about? And that is where the path started. So I will say that Varus will always have a place in my heart as my Arrow Ace King. But as a follow-up, I will say that Lilith from the Owl House is a really cool character that happens to be asexual, as well as Alistair from Has Been Hotel. Fun characters. I love both of them. They both just happen to be asexual. It's not really a core part of their characters like how it is for Varus, nor are they core parts of my lore as a person, as an asexual person. But those two characters are still really cool, and I love them both very much. Question from IdiotinGlans. I'm afraid that the 2024 Bastion system will spawn a whole new wave of horror stories where toxic players try to use the fact the DM is nominally not supposed to interact with a Bastion to get away from consequences by hiding in it. Yet whenever I voice these concerns, I am told that A, this is a problem of individual toxic players that has to be solved through individual means, and B, Bastions have to be out of the DM's control because otherwise toxic DMs would just destroy them or screw them in other ways. A pair of arguments that strikes me as hypocritical when put together. What is your opinion? My opinion is that the people you were talking to were right on the first count. This is a problem with individual players, because if they just hide in the Bastion the whole time, where's the adventure? The core parts of D&D's mechanics don't revolve around sitting in a building all the time. You're mostly moving around. Look at every single module Wizards of the Coast has ever released. It is always constant, consistent travel. I think that's why player housing wasn't really high on their to-do list when it came to designing 5th edition, even though player housing is something that is so desired in so many different games. They didn't prioritize that because the designers had a more Lord of the Rings-esque adventure in mind where you're moving from place to place. And even after the Bastion system is introduced, it's still clear that that is their goal with this system. The Bastion is something you go to between adventures, not something you permanently reside in. I guess you're trying to say that, oh, what if Tiamat is destroying the world and the player is hiding the Bastion since technically it's invincible? Look, those kind of places are where a DM can make an individual call. Like, I think most players would understand that Tiamat can definitely attack the Bastion regardless of what they roll. Bastions are definitely not 100% outside the DM's control. I do think there are plenty of things that DMs can do with Bastions that are really, really fun, and I don't think Wizards of the Coast designed Bastions as a way for players to cheese the game. It's a fairly simple player housing system at the end of the day, and again, people who do exploit it, that is on individual players. As for the second point about Bastions being destroyed by toxic DMs, frankly, toxic DMs are going to do that no matter what the rules say. They're toxic DMs. As a forever dungeon master and someone who loves DMing, I have to always tell people the reason WotC are probably afraid of adding rules that aid a toxic DM mentality is because toxic DMs are pretty much always worse than toxic players. You can kick out a toxic player, no problem. You can't kick out a toxic DM. They are a necessity for the game. I think the designers were mostly worried about DMs using Bastions as an easy gotcha, like, oh, you're gone from your Bastion, I'm just going to destroy it. That's why they have the random tables, to see if the Bastion is attacked, and why Bastions generally don't get completely destroyed unless they're away from them for an extremely long period of time. Basically, I think Bastions will be fine. Enjoy your cute player housing mechanics, and if there's a toxic player, you gotta deal with that above table. Next up, spicywhitemustard. Have you considered doing any tutorial videos for DMs that are unsure about certain monsters? I watched the video about the False Hydra and thought it's interesting to see how others would run the different enemies for their tabletops. Oof. The False Hydra video was really fun, though I will say I did get a lot of hate for that video. Unsurprising, it's a popular monster, and I did say it was stupid, so I completely get it. People are allowed to disagree with me, that's no problem. I do have some interest in making more videos based on monsters. They do get really popular on YouTube, and the False Hydra video is by far the best performing tabletop tavern tips video in a while. However, I do also think that it could present some problems. For starters, it's not my specialty. I'm not a game designer, so in terms of talking about game design and game design problems, I don't think I'd be the person to go to, just because my education in that field is way less than someone like Matt Colville, for example. In terms of lore, Wizards of the Coast, Forgotten Realms, that lore doesn't really interest me. You can probably tell in the False Hydra video that that was not the main thing I was concerned about. The reason I made the False Hydra video is because the False Hydra presents a possible social problem above table. That's my area of expertise. That's why I talked about it. It's harder to apply that sort of mentality to, like, a lich, for example. I'm not saying never, but I'm just saying it's definitely not a guarantee. Question from Paul Durando, 9466. Have you ever gotten super attached to a villain and have been sad when they got killed off? The boss that my party is currently fighting is really fun to roleplay, and I'll be sad to see them go. I'm gonna be honest, no. I've never really been that attached to my bad guys. I like my bad guys, but at the end of the day, I generally want them to die. I make them so that they're hateable, even to me. Like Matthias Fowler in 10th Tomb, that guy is a horrific abuser. Terrible person. I can't wait for him to meet his end in a horrific way, and that's exactly what I got, and therefore, I was happy. I generally make my villains with the idea that they are going to die. Like, I fantasize about how epic this death is going to be, and I don't get bummed out when I get my wish, my heart's desire fulfilled by my bloodthirsty party. It probably doesn't help that one of my biggest flaws as a dungeon master is that I am pretty darned miserable at creating villains that I enjoy role-playing. I generally rip off villains from video games and such, like Raphael from Baldur's Gate 3, and that works out really well for me, but playing that kind of character only is fun for so long, and generally speaking, I enjoy playing friends of the party more than I enjoy playing enemies of the party. I guess it's just my taste. If you don't want your villain to get killed off, I do think that that is something you're going to need to square with your party. Like, if they want to kill the villain, they have the freedom to do that. They are the bad guy. Maybe you could do some kind of redemption path for them, but just keep in mind that stories end. It's okay. Like, for a while, I was bummed out that Yumi from the 10th Tomb, her story is pretty much done, but upon reflection, I realized, like, that's what stories do. They end, and that's okay. Your villain having an epic death at the hands of the players might be the perfect end to their story. Who knows? Question from Craving the Crazy. What's the best thing to do when your big bad evil guy ends up at the bottom of the initiative? I just ran a Halloween one-shot and my big villain ended up at a bad roll, while my players got fantastic ones. I did my best to make him memorable, but he really couldn't do a lot since my players were keeping a distance and using spells. So, for starters, I always just have the villain start at a point where if the players try to run away, they're still within range of his spell attacks. Every boss I design has some kind of teleportation, or a sprint, or a range attack so that they can cover their bases. Rolling low on initiative really doesn't matter for a lot of my bad guys, and I honestly have them rarely go at the top because my players roll really well on initiative, like a lot, and some of them have excellent initiative bonuses and dex scores, so it's fairly unlikely that my villains are going to be at the top of the round. Design your bosses in a way that's sensible for your players. Do they have a lot of range attacks? Have the villain have tons of movement speed or range attacks? I'm not saying they need to be a perfect rock to your player's scissors. That's not the point. But they should be able to function within the bounds of what your party does. Your villain should never be completely irrelevant if they are the big bad at the end of the campaign. Question from Kiwi the Fruit. I was wondering where you get inspo for your world building. I really like the style of game that you run. Now, I will say, the style of game that I run and my world building are connected, but they are not necessarily entirely attached. Your style of game goes beyond your world building. It also goes into the things that you enjoy about the game part of the game. Like, does your game have tons and tons of loot for your players to customize and choose from? Does your game focus on player housing, or are you constantly traveling? Do you have a lot of NPCs? Stuff like that. As for my world building, it also just depends on whatever I'm enjoying at the time. When I was building out House of Devils, my third full homebrew campaign, I was playing Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So a lot of that game was about traveling, just like I did a lot in Legend of Zelda. 10th Tomb was more inspired by the spy thriller and urban setting of Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, which was a game I was enjoying at the time. I am a reactionary rip-offer. Whatever I love, I rip off. And you know what? That's okay. My general philosophy has been building out really dark worlds. Like, my worlds have no lawful good gods or any armies of angels or any overwhelming force of good. The universe is filled with darkness and evil, overwhelming existential threats. But that is what makes my worlds charming. It's grim, yes, but the stories are about heroes standing up to that. There's no grand power that's going to save you. It's you who need to save you. You need to carve your own fate. And I don't know. I like that. Anyway, I'm gonna end today's episode there. I know a lot of you guys might be struggling right now, and I don't know if I need to clarify why, but trust me, I'm with you there. And I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'll be here. A lot of you guys have expressed that I have carried you through hard times, that you listen to my voice when you need a pick-me-up. And I'm not gonna lie, I think I need a pick-me-up right now, but I won't forget about you guys. I won't forget what this channel means to this community. So, Crispy's Tavern is not going anywhere, and neither am I. Trust. But hey, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our RPG Horror Story series. Full things linked in the cards. We've made so many of these things at this point, and seeing how it evolves is kind of charming. So yeah, full series linked in the cards. But before you go, please leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own questions or thoughts, you can go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, Helldivers never die, to reference the game playing in the background and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.